Auctions look like a shortcut, cheap guide prices, quick completions, and you feel like you're stepping into the property investor world. But recently I've had quite a few people in my one-to-one sessions tell me that they want their first ever property investment to come from an auction. For some people, I genuinely think it can be a great fit, but for others, they were very close to making some expensive mistakes. So in this video, I want to show you exactly how auctions work behind the scenes, the risks beginners usually don't spot, and whether buying your first buy-to-let this way is actually a good idea. But just to be clear, for the sake of this video, I'm not a financial advisor or an accountant. I'm just sharing what I've learned as a property investor myself, alongside my background in investment banking. Right, let's get into it. Why do auctions look appealing? Let's be honest, auctions look really exciting. Low guide prices, quick decisive timelines, properties where you can add value, and you feel like you're getting the investor-only deals. For someone buying their first buy-to-let, it really is tempting to go with an auction. But that same speed and simplicity is also where a lot of the risk comes from with auctions. So I think it's best to start by explaining how do auctions actually work. There is a lot to auctions in general, but here's the quick version. There are two main types of auctions that you'll find for property, and the main difference between them is actually what happens after you win. So with a traditional auction, you register, you bid. If you win, you exchange contracts straight away and you pay the deposit immediately. And then completion is typically 28 days after. You are legally committed to the property from the moment the hammer falls. But the second type of auction you might see, and is becoming increasingly popular, is modern method of auction, MMOA. The start is similar, you register and you bid, but if you win, you don't exchange immediately. Instead, you pay a reservation fee and you typically get around 56 days to complete, sometimes longer. And that reservation fee is usually non-refundable. Traditional auctions are still the main format with the big auction houses, but MMOA has exploded because estate agents earn more from the fees. So beginners often run into modern method more than they expect, because it's typically what you find on Rightmove. But let's jump into the risks and what surprises pretty much everyone when it comes to auctions. So the first big risk that I want to highlight are tenants. If a property is auctioned and sold with tenants in situ, you inherit that tenancy. You are legally taking over whatever tenancy agreement is already in place, and you can't legally break that easily. Someone I had a consulting session recently with bought an auction property planning to refurb it straight away, only to realise tenants were still living there. We ended up having to agree a fair early surrender, sometimes called cash for keys, and it worked well for everyone, but that was not part of his original plan or budget. If the tenants had refused, he would have been stuck for months waiting for their tenancy to end before he could start renovation. For a first investment, that's a lot of uncertainty. The second big risk I like to highlight with auctions is finance. And it's really important if you're planning to use a mortgage. Auction properties in general tend to be more rundown, missing kitchens or bathrooms, showing signs of damp or subsidence, or needing significant work. And lenders, for mortgages, avoid risks. That's what they do. If anything in the valuation for the property, so the condition or the legal pack, does not meet their criteria, then it can slow the whole process down or decline the mortgage entirely. Because auctions move quickly, any delay can make you miss the completion deadline, which can get extremely expensive extremely fast. That's why cash is often king at auctions, or why a lot of investors use bridging finance. Bridging itself is fine, but the fees and interest add up and you need a clear exit. On a first investment, that can stretch things quite thin. If you want to learn more about bridging, I'll link a video up here where I talk through a real bridging offer that I was given and tell you all the fees involved and what it really means. The third main risk that I see in auctions is the legal pack, and it tends to be where a lot of the real issues live. Things I've seen in legal packs include short leases or service charge increases about to land, restrictive covenants, title issues, unregistered land, additional buyer premiums, tenants not actually leaving, like my example before, and then odd clauses in the special conditions, and even access right problems. If your solicitor does not have time to properly review the legal pack before you bid, it's very easy that you'll commit yourself to something that you didn't fully understand. For a first buy to let, that adds a lot of risk. My fourth one is fees. So just when you think you've accounted for everything, there are the fees. Auction admin fees, buyer premiums, seller fees, it all adds up really quickly. And if you're bridging that on top, then you've got all the bridging fees as well. And also it's worth mentioning that with certain auction formats, particularly modern method, the reservation fee that you're paying to purchase the property can count towards the chargeable consideration, which actually means the stamp duty might be calculated on the property price plus the fee. So for example, if you had a property you bought for 100,000 and then the fees were £6,000, stamp duty wouldn't be based on the 100,000, it would be based on 106,000. Now that chargeable consideration is not always the case, and it's not a deal breaker on its own, but it's something that you want to know about before you bid. Hence why I'm talking about it in my risks. And so my fifth and final risk is the renovation. Most auction properties need work, that's usually why they're there, but with a 10 to 15 minute viewing slot that you typically get, you won't be able to always spot everything. everything. So damp work, rewiring, boiler issues, structural concerns. A lot of this only reveals itself when you start opening things up. Even with the years of DIY and renovation experience that I have, I still get surprises. And if this is your first ever renovation, you're gonna have to think about going in with a generous contingency budget. So let's answer the big question. Should your first investment property be from an auction? This is the decision point that most beginners struggle with. So here's my honest view. If you have never renovated a property before, then auctions might not be the simplest place to start. Or if your budget is tight, then the auction fees, the bridging finance, and unexpected repairs can definitely stretch you. But if you are confident with refurb and comfortable with risk, then auctions can be brilliant. You can find real value if you know what you're doing. And if you're doing BRRR for your investment property, then auctions can work really well if you already know how to cost the refurb properly and if you have a clear plan for the refinance. But on the other hand, if you want your first experience in property to be calm and predictable instead, then maybe a regular buy-to-let through an agent is more straightforward. There is no single right answer to this. It depends on your experience, your appetite for risk, and how comfortable you are with these variables. But if you do want to buy at auction, here's how I would approach it. View the property in person, get the legal pack reviewed as early as you can, check whether fees affect the stamp duty, make sure the property is lendable if you are using finance, line up your finance before the bidding, set your maximum bid and actually stick to it, budget for surprises, and don't feel the pressure to bid if something falls off. Always feel comfortable walking away if you have to. There will be another property. So if you found a property that you like the look of and want to practice running the numbers or stress testing your own deals, then my free resources are in the description below, including my property investment spreadsheet. So wrapping this up, auctions definitely have their place, but they're not the only good way to find investment, especially when you're just starting out. If you would prefer a more controlled way of finding your first deal, something where you can take your time, run the numbers calmly, and avoid the auction timelines, check out this video over here. It's where I walk through how I find standard buy-to-let deals for a property I need to renovate on Rightmove with a real example. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.